Welcome back, cider makers, and in today's video we're going to be making a New World style cider using Pink Lady apples. The recipe for today's video is relatively simple. We're going to be using 4 gallons of Treetop 3 apple blend, 1 gallon of Pink Lady apple juice that was fresh pressed using Pink Lady apples, and 6 ounces of Bittersweet concentrate from Morebeer. We will be combining those ingredients into our fermenter, oxygenating, and then allowing to ferment for about 2 months. Following fermentation, we will be performing agar clarification. See the link in the video description above in order to see what agar clarification is. The yeast we'll be using for today's video is Lallemond Belle Saison. Following agar clarification, we will be stabilizing the cider using 75 parts per million potassium metabisulfate and 125 parts per million potassium sorbate. We will be back sweetening with 500 grams of sugar in a 2-to-1 simple syrup. That means that we will be using 250 grams of water and 500 grams of sugar. After back sweetening, the cider will be placed into a keg and pressurized to 2.25 atmospheres of pressure to produce a petulant finish. The cider started at 1.056 specific gravity and ended at 1.00 specific gravity. Back sweetening brought this up to 1.010 specific gravity. Now, on to the tasting. Alright, it is time for the tasting of our New World style cider with Pink Lady apples. So let's go ahead and give it a pour. This cider turned out wonderfully clear. It is a nice, very, very clear cider. It has pretty good head retention, which is nice. I can't quite remember what yeast I used for this cider, so I'll be doing a little bit of a blind type of sample on it, but that's fine because we can maybe get a little bit of impressions about what we got going on here. So, from an aesthetic perspective, it is nice and clear. Nice creamy white head, nice kind of variant bubble pattern for it. So overall, just a very pleasant cider to look at. Let's go ahead and give it a sniff. So right off the bat, it does have an appley presence. It kind of has a little bit of a floral quality. And it has something that I would describe more of kind of like a little bit of a funk to it. It's not an unpleasant funk, it's just a funk. So when you kind of describe funk, you would kind of get the impression that it doesn't quite smell 100% clean. Like you would expect something like it is an aroma that is not like, oh, this is apple. This is distinct aroma. It has something else going on in it, whether that be something that happened as a co-fermentation, maybe something that happened after fermentation. We really don't know, but I can tell you that it's not necessarily like a straight apple smell that you're getting out of it. It's something apple plus something. So that's kind of funk in a nutshell. Let's go ahead and give it a taste. Let's start with a short sip first. So right off the bat, it's lightly tart. It's not as tart as I would have expected for a Pink Lady cider. It is kind of what I would describe as the upper end of semi-sweet. It's going in towards the more sweet cider range. I can't remember exactly how I back sweetened this right now, but the recipe that was earlier in the video will kind of give you that idea. It definitely has that kind of. It has a little bit of a kind of a farmyard type character to it, is what I would kind of describe it as. It's a little bit. There's a little bit of like a bitter end in the back end that is kind of interesting. It's not like, okay, this is clean, just pure apple cider. It has some character to it, and I'm going to presume that was brought about by the yeast, considering that we went through and did all of our apples, kind of our apple process of making them. We went through and boiled them to get out any sort of external like funk off of it. So I don't really anticipate there was a co-fermentation with another yeast in here. So I'm going to assume that everything that happened in here was something that happened as part of the fermentation process. That being said, it's pretty tasty. Gonna go ahead and give it a kind of a longer taste. So there's no real alcohol heat here, which is kind of expected for an alcohol of this ABV level. What I am getting is kind of that it has a nice balanced sweet front end with a kind of bitter back end. Presumably, maybe from the extra tannin from the skin contact that we had while we were pressing this juice. It was very minimal, but it's still possible to go off it. Pretty much always that if you use fresh cider apples, you're going to have some variety of tannin addition from the peels or from whatever you use it from, as well as kind of just like maybe there's some variations inside the actual quality of the fruit that you get from it. You press from it. Supermarket apples, when you get them, they have a tendency to be on the shelves for upwards of between 6 months to a year. Typically, when you're getting apples, you're getting last year's batch of apples. So the later in the season you get them, the more likely you are to get late year apples. So keep that in mind. That being said, I do kind of like this. It is nice and pleasant. It's very indicative of a New World style cider with just a little bit of hint of a bitter back end. And I think that bitter back end is what's kind of distracting me from the overall cider enjoyment here. I think that this is a wonderful cider, but it's kind of missing the mark a little bit. All right, so let's go ahead and do our evaluation. All right, let's go through our score sheet. We're going to start off with the fact that it obviously is acidic because it's a cider. And it's also fruity because it is, well, it's an apple cider. No real sediment. Appearance is a solid 10 out of 10. Clarity is great. The appearance is a solid 6 out of 6. It is perfectly clear. It has wonderful color applicable to the style, like golden yellow. And also, it is nice and carbonated to the amount that we expected, which would be petulant. So, go ahead and give this a 6 out of 6. Bouquet and aroma, this is where I'm going to kind of mark off for it. That kind of footy back end is kind of detracting from it, so I'm going to bring it down to a 7 out of 10. That's a pretty big distraction. Whatever yeast I used here, I don't necessarily like that much, but that being said, this is, God, I'm going to have to look this up, because I just did a tasting video for 4 different cider yeasts, and this kind of reminds me of Belle Saison from that cider yeast video. So I have a feeling that this is Belle Saison. So I'll let you know. Flavor, it is semi-sweet as expected, but it is that bitter back note. That's not really indicative of a New World style cider. You kind of want that nice clear thing there. So because aftertaste is worth 5, sweetness, acidity, alcohol, body, and carbonation. The sweetness, it's a little bit too sweet. And then the aftertaste is a little bit too harsh. So I'm going to give it a 2 for aftertaste, which would be 2 out of 5. And I'm going to mark off 3 points for sweetness. So I'm going to give this a 19 out of 24. And then overall impression, it's okay. It's an okay cider. It's not great, it's not bad, it's okay. It's what we can do with, it feels like it's something that this can be made better. That is my opinion, is that this cider can be made better with the same ingredients, maybe using a different process or perhaps a different yeast. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a 7 out of 10 for overall impression, which brings our total to 14 plus 19, which is 33, plus 6, which would be 39 out of 50. So that would bring my final score to a 7.8 out of 10. So that's my final score for this cider. I hope you enjoyed this video. I do make a lot of variations on New World style ciders. I think it's really fun to see what you can do with just fruit in the supermarket combined with juice you can get in the supermarket. There's a lot of varieties. Pink Ladies is one of my favorite dessert apples, but is it a good cider apple? I'll just say the jury's still out on that one. But this is a nice recipe for you to try on your own. If you want to get into that more intermediate cider making, I would recommend giving this a go. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed this video. If you would like to see more cider making content, I frequently post things here, as well as tips and tricks. So go ahead and take a look in the channel if you want to see something. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, just leave a comment down below. Anyway, as always, cheers. Happy cider making. What?
Cheers. You got cheers.
Hey, my boy!